Live and direct from anywhere in the world, it's The Kelley Show with Dr. Kelley Mondesire.
Hello and welcome back to The Kelley Show, real people with real stories in real time. And I'm Dr. Kelley Mondesire, and we continue the month of February, the month of love and everything of the heart. And everyone puts emphasis on love and relationships and broken hearts and happy hearts this month. But what about the heart itself? What makes a happy but yet healthy heart? And here's a little fact. Did you know you can be brain dead, but if your heart is still pumping, you're considered to be brain dead, but still alive? Think about that. Well, today, my special guest is a very dear friend of mine, but also one of New York City's most prestigious cardiac nutritionists and then some. So stay tuned. We'll be right back from a word from our sponsor, and you don't want to miss this conversation. Be right back.
This portion of The Kelley Show is being brought to you by White Wolf Advisory Services. We are the bridge between nations, creating growth, commerce, and collaboration between cultures. Contact us today for more information.
Welcome back to the month of love and everything of the heart. But today we're going to get a little bit more serious than normal. I have a special guest today, and I have to read the credentials because this woman is the bomb. Michelle Routhenstein, MS, RD, CD, ECES, CDN, that's a lot of words, but it means quite a bit, is the owner of Entirely Nourished, a nutritional counseling and consulting private practice specializing in the prevention and management of heart disease. Michelle is a registered dietitian nutritionist who takes a science-based, personalized approach to improve heart function and address cardiometabolic risk factors to help increase quality of life and reduce the risk of heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular complications. She is a thought leader and acknowledged as such, and she is an expert in heart disease management and prevention. Michelle is committed to educating individuals on nurturing their hearts for healthy and thriving lives. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce and bring into the studio my dear friend, Michelle Routhenstein. Michelle, come on in. How are you?
Hi, Kelley. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, for our audience, because you have very high credentials, can you please tell us with all those initials after your last name mean? Let's educate the audience on what an expert you are.
Thank you so much. So I'm a registered dietitian, nutritionist who specializes in heart disease prevention and management through science-based nutrition. I've had clinical experience in both a residency capacity and in clinical practice and in actual practical practice within the cardiology field. And this really looks at cardiometabolic health. So one of my credentials is being a certified diabetes educator, which is another licensing board to make sure that I'm also looking at the whole picture. So everything in the heart is focused on so many aspects of cardiometabolic well-being. And I'm excited to talk about that with you today.
Okay, well, let's back it up. That is phenomenal because you've just told the audience so much about what it is that you do and what they're going to learn today during this conversation. But where are you from and where in the world are you now?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I was in Manhattan for a majority of my life, and then COVID happened, and now I'm situated in Long Island with my family.
Okay, and you have several children, yes?
Yep, I have 4 sweet little boys who, drive me every day to continue doing what I'm doing. So it's a pleasure.
So let's go back to something a little bit more serious now. I wanted to take this step by step with you because this is such an important topic for our viewers to learn about nutrition, their hearts, metabolic care, and what they need to know to live happy and healthy lives. So why is cardiac health so important for heart health. People, I find in my conversations, particularly down here in the South of the United States, don't really take heart health seriously. You should come down here, you'll make a fortune. You'll have 2 private islands and a boat.
So the thing with heart disease is it silently brews. And most people don't know that they're at risk of a cardiovascular event. You don't feel it until something can happen. And so a lot of things brew silently over years and decades. What I want to emphasize, though, is being proactive in your care can actually help you reduce your risk of cardiovascular events by 80 to 90%. So giving you a little bit of background, I actually went to NYU on a pre-med track while studying nutrition. And I had to decide whether I was going to do my residency in clinical nutrition or my residency as a physician. And I decided to go to be a dietitian because I wanted to prevent versus treat. I didn't want someone to have disease and then treat them with medication. I wanted to prevent the disease to happen in the first place. And even if when people come to me who already had an event, I want to prevent a second event. So I tell you this because I niche down into cardiology specifically because it is year after year the #1 cause of death in men and women globally. But wait a second, 80 to 90% is preventable. So where is this gap? Why aren't we preventing it? And that's where I went really, really deep in my extra learning. I kind of created my own fellowship, so to speak, where I trained with electrophysiologists, lipidologists, preventative cardiologists, heart failure specialists, all these different types of heart-related physicians in New York City, and took in the science-based nutrition arm of that practice and really focused in on vascular health and really looking at all cardiometabolic risk factors and making people aware. Listen, you don't realize heart disease can happen in any body shape, in any body size, in any age. And we need to know our numbers because you can't feel your numbers be high until something happens. So if we are proactive and we optimize all cardiometabolic risk factors, we can reduce our risk. And that's really important. But we need to know what our risk is. And most people don't know until it's too late or they have an event. So that's why I really want to emphasize that prevention piece because we have a lot more power than many people think to take control.
That is true. We all need to take control and take responsibility for our own health. Of course, we know there are hereditary issues that come into play. There are socioeconomic factors that come in play with nutrition. But by and large, I think you would agree that education comes into play here to educate our public and our patients about proper nutrition. Quite frankly, sometimes when I go out to eat down here in South Carolina, I'm absolutely appalled, A, of what I see on the menu, and B, what I see people put in their mouths. And I often wonder, where did these people grow up? Where did they live? And what was their nutrition like when they were growing up, that they have these issues talking at a table about their diabetes, their surgeons, their cardiologists, and they're stuffing in, cream pie. What is this? Boston cream pie, whatever it is. But that segues to my next question. Who is your typical patient, and typically why do they have cardiac issues?
It's a good question. So I see the gamut when it comes to heart health. And when I say that, I see primary prevention. So individuals who know they have a genetic predisposition to heart disease. So I see a lot of people who have high lipoprotein (a), and they want to be as proactive as they can to prevent any cardiovascular complications. I also see people in secondary prevention who've had a cardiovascular event, whether it's a heart attack or a stroke or a pulmonary embolism. and we're trying to prevent any further complications, any further events. I also see people who have heart conditions that are genetic, so genetic cardiomyopathies that we need, or heart failure, aortic stenosis, really anything that has to do with the heart. And in each one of these scenarios, we're really looking at optimizing blood flow, really focusing on specific components of the heart that have nutritional implications. So I look at it at three different ways. We have the pumping ability, the electrical component, and we have the plumbing. So we need to make sure that we are having good vascular tone. We need to make sure we're avoiding plaque buildup in the arteries. We're making sure that our heart is beating regularly, and all of those things have nutritional implications to optimize them.
Okay. And we have a really beautiful slide of you in a kitchen. And what a beautiful array, I'm looking at it right now, of colors. But these are elements, these are vegetables, as I can see, fruits and vegetables, which I put on my plate on a daily basis. But pertaining to this slide, here you are in the kitchen. This is not a typical person, it's you, but here's a person in the kitchen. Now, this is key, because what can everyone out there do to create a happy and healthy heart?
Yeah, so obviously nutrition plays a very big role. We also need to acknowledge consistent exercise, stress management, social connections, our sleep hygiene and quality and quantity. All of those things are really important. But when we talk about nutrition, a big component is nutrient adequacy. So when we're looking at someone's diet, a lot of times people are looking at eliminating things. Right now, it's very big on low carb, eliminate your carbs, have a very high protein diet. But we're seeing that actually too high of a protein diet can increase the risk of more plaque formation, specifically if you're having too much of a specific amino acid called leucine. So getting in lean protein is paramount. We want to make sure that you have good muscle function, good longevity, functional aging, helping with insulin resistance. But we also need to be looking at, are you getting a variety of non-starchy vegetables? Are you getting healthy fat? Are you getting complex carbs in the right quantities for you? That really makes sure you're getting calcium and magnesium and potassium and manganese, etc. And this is really about adequacy. I feel a lot of times people either overdo it or they underdo it in certain nutrients, and we need to be looking at the entire picture. A lot of times, for instance, many women who come to see me have osteopenia or osteoporosis, and that actually increases the risk of plaque formation in the arteries if it's not well controlled, because calcium is leaching out of the bone into the vascular bed, and that can also lead to more calcification. So getting it through your diet is important to also help protect bone health and heart health. So we're really looking at different scenarios and different people of what nutrients they need. Some people are on medications that deplete certain nutrients, and we need to really focus on getting that too. And we take a food first approach because we know that when we have these foods, their elements, their phytonutrients, their vitamins and minerals are in a synergistic balance that our body is able to absorb, utilize it, and excrete what it doesn't need. So it's a really safe and effective way to help with blood flow, to help with vascular health, cholesterol, inflammation, blood pressure. We need to make sure we're really looking at what we can add to the diet and in the right quantities to optimize all risk factors.
Which is all so important. Now, for our viewers out there that are taking this in, and this is all great information, but for some of our viewers out there taking this in, that this is a little bit over their head, they don't quite understand our vernacular here. Can you break it down simply, some of the different acts a person can take for a healthy heart? Let's just keep 5 or 6 points in mind without getting too complicated.
So I love this. When I'm in my group program, my one-on-one programs, I always talk about sustainable change.
I think we have a slide of that. Gareth, put that slide up. There you go. Okay, Michelle.
So when I talk about sustainable change, it is not overhauling your diet. Many people think in order to have a heart healthy diet, I need to do a 360. I need to change everything. And that doesn't work. We need to make sure that when we're trying to protect your heart, we're doing this in a sustainable and realistic way. And the only way to do that is by focusing in on 1 to 3 habits at a time. So I want you to reflect. I want you to kind of look and say, what can I improve? Or what am I ready to improve? Or even before that, what am I already doing? What are my positive actions in my life that I'm already doing? Oh, wow, I eat a well-balanced breakfast. Like I walk a lot, or I exercise. I meet my 150 to 225 minutes of aerobic exercise every week consistently. See what you're doing well. Acknowledge that. Put a check mark. Make sure you have a running list of, hey, these are my good habits. My hydration's really good. All of the things that are going really, really well. And then kind of make a bucket of like, well, what are the things I need to work on? And what am I ready to work on, right? Mm-hmm. So if all of this is overwhelming and it's like, oh my God, I have to work on so many things, pick one meal. Maybe you pick breakfast. Maybe you pick dinner. Maybe you pick an easier meal to focus on. What can you change to that meal to make it more heart healthy? What's that one actionable piece, right? Maybe you have a breakfast in the morning. Let's just say you have, a bowl of oatmeal, but you get hungry 30 minutes later. It's not a satisfying breakfast. There's missing elements that are not good. Your blood sugar is spiking and it's coming back down and saying it's hungry again. Don't ignore hunger. Maybe that's a signal to say, okay, I'm focusing on breakfast. And if you're having oatmeal, okay, where can I add protein? Where can I add fiber? Where can I add my healthy fat to balance out this oatmeal for satiety? And that's important to recognize. So one step at a time. Maybe it's also, okay, you pick one step in nutrition. I mentioned exercise. Okay, Michelle, I love going to the gym, but I only do resistance exercise. I feel like that's very a hot topic right now of only do resistance, don't do aerobic, which is crazy. You need both. But if that's what's happening, you are good at one type of exercise, you actually likely what you need is the other type more. So assess, okay, you know what? I need to move more. So I'm going to anchor in after a meal, 1 meal a day. I'm going to walk for 10 minutes. And that can be your anchor. You do that for a week or 2 and you start realizing, oh, wow, I added 5 minutes to it. That felt really good. You add a little bit more. So you pick one in each category. Maybe we also talk about sleep. You know what? My sleep's terrible. Well, are you on your phone scrolling when you wake up and go to bed? That's reducing melatonin production in the body. Can we have a better sleep ritual? Can we make sure that we aren't drinking water too close to bedtime so we're not waking up in the middle of the night? So kind of thinking of these small actionable goals and recognizing when they work and when they don't. So in the beginning, you may be really good at, focusing on breakfast, but then when you do and you've kind of really got in that balanced meal, you need to recognize, wow, I wasn't hungry for 3 to 4 hours. I was more productive. I felt better throughout the day. I didn't have that craving at night. I didn't have that crash in the middle of the day. When you start realizing those things, you become more mindful to continue that habit long term. And that's a really important concept. So small actions, but then the acknowledgement of how did that action actually transpire in terms of how it made you feel, how it reflected if blood pressure is something you're working on. How did that reflect your blood pressure readings? All of those things are helpful. How did it affect your waist circumference, your weight? So we can add those in, and that really helps create long-term habits because you're monitoring many aspects of its success.
When I was in private practice, I'll say this, generally speaking, many primary care physicians don't want to go there with the obesity word, the F word, or the O word, as we call it. I was much more direct in my private practice, and I would address morbid obesity in my patients that had metabolic issues, that were taking a slew of meds. And I would say to them, what do you eat for breakfast? I always started with breakfast myself. And I would give it to them gently, but pretty straight if I didn't already refer them to you. But we would start with breakfast. and change breakfast around. And, you know, down on Wall Street, I found that many of these people were eating breakfast at home and then on the way to the office, stopping off at what we used to call the roach coaches on the street. And I would say, oh, you ate breakfast at home. Oh, well, why did you get the bagel with the cream cheese from the roach coach? And they would look at me, they'd say, the what? And I would say, the roach coach. You know, didn't you ever see where there's put those food carts at night? You know, the roaches are crawling up the little plastic ones, and it would just knock them out. You know, they would never go back to the roach coaches. So it was a not so subtle way of me to get them to eat just one breakfast starting out. But from there, I would say, why don't you try this on? Why don't you try this? And like you're saying, start with one little step at a time. Take a walk at lunchtime. Bring your lunch to work instead of getting the takeout or order in, which is so very important. And let's talk about the O word, obesity. What is the single one item in your expert opinion or your thought that anyone should eliminate from their daily nutrition? We'll grossly use that term, nutrition. What is the one single item people shouldn't eat?
Refined sugar.
And define what refined sugar is. For those out there that don't want to listen to the word refined sugar, where would we find refined sugar?
A lot of times it's in, your sugar sweetened beverages, it's in your pastries. It can actually come into a lot of our packaged foods if we're not paying attention to it. It's also refined sugar, even though people may categorize honey and maple syrup as healthier alternatives, it's still refined sugar. And we need to cut that back because it really contributes to inflammation in the body. And it contributes to oxidative stress. It makes our blood more stickier, which increases the risk of plaque and plaque instability. And we really need to be taking inventory of where is it coming from and reducing that in the diet.
And what can people substitute the refined sugar, the honey, or the maple syrup with? What would you suggest? What are some alternatives?
So it depends on where you're putting it in, right? So is it a place where we can actually put a whole food instead? So are you putting brown sugar in your oatmeal? I'm going to go back to that one example. Maybe we can chop up some dates and put that instead. Maybe we can use spices like cinnamon and cloves and nutmeg to add more flavor to it. So assess where is it coming from? Can we add more sweetness more naturally and titrate down the amount of refined sugar? Because that's really important. The refined sugar is just really hard to process. And if you have insulin resistance, what ends up happening is it kind of exacerbates that condition. Your body doesn't have enough time to break it down and put it into the cells. So it lingers in the bloodstream, and that's where it causes a lot of issues.
And how can we educate our children about good nutritional habits? Children are bombarded on the television, social media with, it makes my teeth want to fall out and hurt when I think of the ads for these sweetened cereals, the candy. When I see what children, the parents are giving the children to eat, and then they fall asleep, and I think about the tooth rot alone of the sugar just eating at the enamel. What can parents do to encourage the children, teach the children good, healthy habits before they have an obesity issue? It breaks my heart when I see children who are 6, 8 years old, and they look like beach balls, and they've got 2 little black buttons for eyes. It's a shame. I think about, wow, what's going to happen to them in 10 years? Talk to us. Tell us what they can do.
So I love this topic personally because I have 4 sweet boys and I teach them proper nutrition. I think it's important to recognize that you're never putting a child on a diet. We need to be teaching healthy living as healthy living. I never talk about, calorie restriction or no, you can't eat this or you can't eat that. It's not good for you. It's going to do this or do that. I educate my kids on what is going to protect your heart. Why do we need this? And involve them in conversations. I'm not a short order cook. I'm too busy to be that. So we all eat the same food. And it's important that you expose it. I've never looked at a children's menu. And when I go to a restaurant, when they are like, oh, here's a children's menu, I'm like, no, my kids have always ordered from the adult section of the menu because I want to nourish their body and I want to teach them young, but we have conversations. They come with me to the grocery store and they help me pick out our vegetables and our fruit, and we have conversations about them. We smell them, we touch them. They help me in the kitchen on the weekends, not during the week. I don't have time for that. But when we are on the weekends, we get messy in the kitchen. We get our hands in, we wear aprons, we get excited. And I let my kids eat foods that are not considered healthy because I want them to have a positive relationship with food. You want to teach your kids young how to eat healthy so that when they're out of the house, they're eating healthy because they know they feel better healthy. They know that they perform better healthy. They recognize that. And, we have conversations. When one of my kids loves food, he's like me, he's a big foodie, and he will go and sometimes, like one time he overdid it. And I was like, how do you feel? Like, how does that make you feel? He's like, I don't feel good. It's too much. And you know what? I heard him another time be like, that was really yummy and I want more, but I'm going to stop. And this is a 7-year-old. This was when he was 7. So what I'm trying, it's a conversation. It's being in tune with your body, teaching your kids how to eat healthy, teaching your kids to stay active. My kids, every single, fall, winter, they're always active. And I say, we have to move our bodies. So what do you want to do? And one of my kids every time switches. He's done tennis, swimming, soccer. And I say, you have to stay for the season, but if you don't like it, try something else. And he's finding his way. And you know what? That's important. I want them to be in tune with how they're feeling in their bodies. And it really, to eradicate heart disease, it's teaching our kids how to eat heart healthy so that their plaque isn't brewing in their arteries in a very young age. So we need to teach in a positive way. Okay, eat your, let's say, salmon. Like, what does salmon do? Salmon has these things that help with our brain health. It helps lower the inflammation in our bodies so that we don't get sick. They associate that. And so they're like, I want to eat that. They look at the positives of it versus the negatives. So they have a good relationship with food. And that's a really important component. You don't want them to feel like they're on a diet, that they can't go to a party and eat cake. Like, they can do that. We all can do that. There's no such thing as a perfect diet, but we need to do it in a way that's sustainable, positive, and is a good relationship with our food and our environment and how our body feels.
Oh, bravo on that. And last question before we go to break. What is your take on, years ago, I weaned myself off putting sugar in my coffee, and I started putting cinnamon in my coffee. And I put cinnamon in my oatmeal every morning. And if someone put sugar in my oatmeal or put sugar in my coffee, I think I would spit it out and need to rinse my mouth off. But what is your take on these sugar substitutes, stevia? They come in now the yellow, green, pink, and blue. I don't even know what they are because I don't even go for it. So what's your take on all these substitutes?
Yes, so we are seeing some studies that some of these substitutes are causing a reduction in our good bacteria in our gut. So we do want to reduce them, reduce its use as much as possible. We also are seeing some research showing that these artificial sweeteners increase insulin resistance. And it's like, well, why? There's no sugar in there. Well, you're eating something very sweet and your body is really smart. So it's preparing itself and it's releasing insulin. but there's no sugar for it to open up. Those sugars going into the cells. So the body pumps out insulin, but there's no actual physiological response with the glucose. And that weakens those receptors over time, leading to insulin resistance. So it has a negative effect on gut health. It has a negative effect just on insulin resistance. And they're very preliminary studies. They're not the best in terms of design, but we are seeing some possible connection with platelet aggregation and blood clotting risk. And so my big thing is, if we can reduce its use, that's ideal in terms of just overall health. We also have to look at the whole picture, right? If someone is having poor blood sugar control or needs to, or, we have to do it in a well-balanced way, but overall, it's not something I recommend.
Got it. Well, we'll be right back after word from our sponsor. Don't go away when my very special guest, Michelle Routhenstein, will come back and join us and give us a few more tidbits about heart healthy care. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This portion of The Kelley Show is being brought to you by White Wolf Advisory Services. We are the bridge between nations, creating growth, commerce, and collaboration between cultures. Contact us today for more information.
Welcome back with me and my special guest, Michelle Routhenstein. Wonderful, beautiful woman, colleague, friend, and one of New York City's top cardiac preventive nutritionists. Michelle, we have a tradition on The Kelley Show. If you could name one person, place, thing, or experience that you are grateful or thankful for, who or what would it be?
That's a great question. I'd have to say what my dad has had a lot of influence in terms of my preventative approach to healthy living. He used to say a phrase when I was really little, and he repeated it constantly, and I never really understood it until I was in college learning. And he would say, "Michelle, without your health, you have nothing." And it's really true. And it's really taking that preventative approach. He kind of always stayed up late with me, made sure I had a well-balanced meal, would always make sure that was even more prioritized before sleep, really focus on moving your body and going to the doctor and checking your labs. And, that really put a big influence in the prevention approach and taking the lifestyle aspect of it and really prioritizing it. So I'm grateful for him, and especially kind of pushing me in this direction of what I do, because I love being a cardiovascular dietitian. It's so fulfilling to have a positive impact on so many people's lives. And so I'm truly grateful.
And we want to give your dad credit. What is his name, so we can give him credit for your path in nutrition?
Yeah, he is a Frank Nabatian.
Okay, well, thank you, Frank, because you gave the world Michelle. And Michelle, I can't thank you enough for taking all the individuals I sent your way. As you know, I still highly regard you, and anyone I do meet, I do refer to you because you are the best at what you do. And I want to thank you for coming on to The Kelley Show, sharing this month of February of love and the heart. But the heart is just so important. And folks, if you don't have a healthy heart, you better start doing something about it. But doing something about it, if you would like to reach out to Michelle, we have her contact information up here. We're going to put it full screen for you. Reach out to Michelle Routhenstein, and here's her information. She is New York City's cardiology dietitian and preventive cardiology nutritionist. She'll be happy to answer your questions. She does take new patients. And Michelle, thank you once again for coming on. I wish you all the best. I hope to see you soon in person. And happy Valentine's Day to you. And wow, 4 little boys. Last time I saw you, you only had 2. Time flies.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure chatting with you today.
So if you would like to be on The Kelley Show, a future episode, reach out to us. We have our contact information here. And don't forget to subscribe today to The Kelley Show. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, contact us, send us your contact information, a little bit about yourself, the reason why you would like to be on The Kelley Show, and we'll have a conversation. So stay tuned for next week when we continue the month of love and relationships and everything of the heart, when we have a special guest. Won't tell you who, it's a secret. Gonna have to subscribe and tune in on dating apps and the modern day dating game. So stay tuned. We'll see you next week. Gareth, take it away.
If you would like to be a guest on The Kelley Show, send us an email with your contact information, where in the world you are, and a brief description of the story you'd like to share today.